From writing code to building engineering and product teams to running companies, he has led high-performance teams through rapid growth at some of the fastest-moving software companies around. Sharp strategist, seasoned SaaS builder, experienced leader, and now CEO of TextExpander, JD Mullin is also a husband, father of two, and a relentless champion for better meetings, advocating the now famous no agenda, no attenda rule during his T-Sheets days. Let's see if even he couldn't escape a worst meeting ever. JD, thanks for joining us on Worst Meeting Ever. So tell us, what is it like to run one of the top collaboration and productivity software companies with a remote team?
It's a blast. I mean, the way I look at it is any day I get to write software, or the fact that we actually get paid to build software, I just think is a blessing. Like, I'm grateful all the time in any environment to be able to say that I get to, work by doing something I love. I wrote software as a kid, just loved it to death, and somehow landed in a field where I get to do it every day. And so at TextExpander, it's the same thing, trying to grow a small company. Put one foot in front of the other every day and ride the roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and it's a blast, but every day I'm just kind of lead with being grateful that I get to build software for a living. Is pretty bonkers. Yeah,
that's awesome. Having lived the software CEO life for a while now, I imagine I've got a pretty good idea of the kinds of meetings that your life looks like. But take us into that. Like, how would you break those into categories, and maybe, how many meetings are you typically in a given week?
Yeah. Maybe start with just how many.
Yeah.
It's really variable. So
okay.
I try to avoid recurring meetings except for just run the business sort of stuff. And so because of that, week to week can look very different based on what I'm up to. So if I'm recruiting, then I could have a ton of meetings because I'm doing interviews. If it's just a normal run the business week, it can be quite a bit lower. So I'm probably anywhere from 15 to 30, 35 meetings a week.
Yeah.
I do not like to have back-to-back meetings. I coach my team on this. Some of them still do this, and it drives me bonkers. Absolutely think you have to have time to reflect and take a moment after a meeting to write down your thoughts, figure out what your to-do items are. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They try and cram stuff in, and you get really busy, and it turns out now you're not even getting value from the meetings you went to because you forgot half the details because you're 4 hours later into the day. So 15 to 30 probably. Some of them are operational, so I think they're the no-brainers. I meet with my leadership team once a week and spend time with them. I do sales pipeline reviews. I talk to my marketing leader. So I would just kind of generally call that like operational, run the business sort of stuff. I still do attend a bi-weekly product team meeting where I want to see what the software team has built. I want to watch the demos. I want to nerd out with them and still try to be a software person and not just the CEO. And so those are kind of the recurring that are always going to happen. There's strategic check-in meetings as well. So we'll have some big rocks that we're trying to push for the year. And so every week before the leadership meeting, one of those objectives comes in. So say we have 3 or 4 objectives for the year. Every week they rotate through. So once a month we get to talk to each of those teams. And so those are recurring as well. So I spend time, that's probably more strategy and trying to just be guardrails for the team of are we going where we intended to go with that project? Are they stuck anywhere? How can we unblock them? Then my executive team one-on-ones I have. And then I do a fair amount of just check-in, skip levels with other teams. So if it's an individual contributor on the sales team, I'll spend time with them, or marketing. So I try and sprinkle those in as well. So I'm not just talking to my leaders, I get to talk to their employees. Outside of
back when we were in person, skip levels, it felt like were easier, right? And so like, how do you really optimize trying to go deeper in the organization in the remote phase?
A couple tactics. The first was the same thing I tried to do. But so first off, you're spot on. I used to love skip levels because I could get people in a room. I was very casual. I could set a tone of, we're here to help this leader. I'm going to coach them. I want you to tell me the good. I want you to tell me, but I could set a tone and get people to riff off of each other. And I would kind of tee it up as, the whole reason we're doing this as a group versus one-on-one is that usually someone will say something and that'll key an idea for someone else. And now we'll get rolling on a theme that someone might not have brought up. They might have thought that was a minor thing, but it turns out 4 people have noticed that as well. And it's an area of opportunity. So I would get gold from those kind of skip levels. Remote, people tend to just be more quiet. I have found. So it can be really hard. There's no room to work to, per se, to get people to speak up. So I still just try and come in with that energy. I think it's about the energy you bring, and it's the framing. It's the first 3 sentences you say and how you say it and in your tone. So I try to do that and still have those kind of meetings. But then also I've resorted to a fair amount of individual one-on-ones
Yeah.
and skip level that way, because then I can get down to, in those situations, you'd also want to I don't take things verbatim and bring them back to the leader. I let the individuals know that I'm abstracting here. I'm looking for themes, and then I'm going to bring those themes to my employees so that I can kind of help coach them. So yeah, it's tricky though, remote.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's awesome. Well, that's cool. So hit me. Let's talk about your worst meeting ever.
Sure. I've done this for 30 years, so it was actually kind of tricky to think about how many I've been in and to completely own it and say that I'm sure I've led a bunch of these as well. So before I even got started talking about a worst meeting, I was just one of I'm not pointing fingers.
Yeah, there's no leader that hasn't run a worst
I cannot
meeting.
imagine how many people would then listen and be like, oh, I was in one of his meetings where he did exactly what he said
how else would
he
we
doesn't
learn?
like. That's how I know.
How else would we learn?
I've absolutely done them,
That's right.
And so thematically, if we just stick to the world of software and building software, I think there are a lot of situations where we have meetings where things are not straightforward. You don't come in with, these are the 3 questions to be answered, and they're straightforward. It's usually very complicated. So the people in the room then need to know details and context to build their own opinion.
Right.
And so I've been in a number of these meetings where we're trying to make a decision to drive a project forward. And they're relatively high stakes if you think about it. I worry sometimes people don't think they are.
Yeah.
But they're relatively high stakes because if you don't make a decision for that team, they're not going to tread water or have their own internal debates until the next time they get to talk to the leadership team about what they're trying to do.
Right.
So I think that's incredibly tricky. But those meetings, for me, the symbol or the signal to know you're in one of these meetings is when there's just a whole lot of discussion to get everyone on the same page. And I think that's a huge gap is when the majority of the meeting, 95% of the meeting, is spent just getting people up to speed so they know why they're there.
Right.
And I have been in a million of these where you now know the feeling where everyone's like, oh, we're short on time, so can we do something right now? And you're like, we just spent 45 minutes and we haven't even let the leader who's going to make a decision ask a question yet.
Right.
Or they asked a question and we got drugged down in the weeds and we answered 27 other things, but we haven't really got to the meat of things.
Right.
So I think a lot of meetings can really, really benefit from the pre-read and having context shared ahead of time. So I'd say worst meetings to me are trying to decide a complicated problem or solve a complicated problem, trying to unblock a team where there's just a lot of context required and nobody has it yet. And so the meeting is really spent just digesting content. And then the worst thing that happens, because this isn't just one bad meeting. I don't just have one bad meeting. The bad meeting for me is when it bleeds into, okay, we kind of figured out what's going on. We really need Susie. She knows the billing engine. She wasn't in this meeting. Let's have her come next time. Let's bring Joe because he knows this part of the stack. And then we'll get back together again.
And we could spend 45 minutes getting them up to speed.
No, this is it. Now you're on the sequence of, plus you're going to go 2 or 3 weeks because you can't get that. Now the meetings got bigger, so there's more people in the room. And you can't get on their calendar in time. So now you're pushed out weeks and weeks. You come back together. No one's done the work to take, what did we learn last time? What do we already know? Now we're getting everyone else back up to speed. So it's basically a rinse and repeat, and you're on recycle mode, and everyone gets really frustrated. And then what I was talking about happens, which is the teams that needed some sort of decision or some sort of direction, they're now bustling among themselves, trying to figure out what to do, trying to guess. They asked one or two questions. Should we just go off of what they asked? And they're trying to read between the lines, which is just awful when there's not a decision to be made. So no context ahead of time, no really deliberate list of questions that need to be answered for the meeting to be a success. And then not enough time, drives me bonkers. And it happens a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if that meeting was a movie, what do you think the name of the movie would be?
Yeah, it's the land of the forgotten pre-read, or the pre-read that time forgot.
That's funny.
That's the missing gap here, right?
Yes.
Is that shared context and understanding that is written down, that doesn't require hand waving in front of a slide deck, that doesn't require a voiceover, that is thoughtful and has been written out ahead of time. That all of everyone and I mean this is. Amazon wrote about, there's the Working Backwards book, which is really famous, which does a great job of describing why you should get your thoughts down.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's just no doubt that it forces you to complete your thoughts, to actually write it out in narrative form.
It is amazing when you think you know what you're going to go say. And if you are forced to write it down ahead of time, you're like, what am I going to say when they ask about this? Or what am I going to do here? It's really to make the presenter or the author of the concept think through their concept, completely. And even if you think you've nailed it, I've done this a bunch of times. Like, I don't need to do it. I know what I'm doing. The team needs to do this, but I don't. There's a red flag for yourself as a leader. It's like, I'm not following the process I have everyone else follow. Whenever that happens, I'll catch myself and I'll be on meeting. I'm like, I should have wrote a brief for this. I should have got my thoughts straight. It just helps in so many levels.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because with the founding of this company, I had this kind of self-imposed year off between the last company and the new one. And one of the, I wasn't going to literally let my brain go to mush for a year. So I was like, I'm going to think about and work on this problem, but I'm going to create this constraint. Like, I'm not going to go hire anybody. I'm not going to build any infrastructure for a company. What I'm allowing myself to do is to write and to sketch, and to kind of think that out. And it's really interesting because I can honestly say now we're, months into the building process. We're still months away from actually shipping. But there's a huge number of things that we have not had to spend time figuring out because they're like these super intricate, edge case issues that got figured out last year. And they're in the 35 pages. That ended up getting written out.
And when you onboard new people or you bring new people into the org, there are artifacts laying around, which is the other thing. So it's not just about the meeting. So now instead of that meeting being some point in time or someone having to go rewatch a meeting, which is still a big time suck, even at 2x speed, it's not the best way to spend time. Whereas if you follow this process, then you end up having these artifacts laying around. And so when new people onboard, you can point them to the artifacts. Here's why we made a decision. Here's what we were up to. So it makes a ton of sense. The other thing you mentioned that just kind of resonated with me was just I have a reminder that comes up every couple of weeks that just says right to think. And I stole this from something that I'd read. But I think whenever you're struggling with something, I think lots of times you're sitting around thinking or you're talking to people is like, have you stopped and just written? Because if you just write, then you will actually think about what you're
through.
Yeah.
And I think that is so fundamentally true. And what's really interesting to me is I really do believe that the leaders of great businesses, and I didn't just mean CEOs when I said leaders. I mean leaders up and down an organization's org chart, right? But the leaders of great businesses in the future are going to embody that principle of right to think, okay? And what's interesting is that I absolutely believe that this AI age that we're in is going to somewhat create distance, more distance between the true leaders of a business in the future and the people who are not capable of leading, because we have a growing generation of people who don't even know what it means to write.
Yeah, there are tricks and tips right now galore around using AI as a thought partner and using it to generate content. And it's fantastic. I love the thought partner portion of that.
For sure.
Helps me think through things, ask great questions. What gaps should I be thinking about right now?
Yeah.
I'll actually give my written content to AI and then say, what are the 3 top questions my team's probably going to have about this? Where are the holes in this? So I actually think it's really great for pre-flighting an idea, but you have to write the content in the first place.
Yeah.
I am absolutely on a mode now, though, where there's just a little too much content being generated where I know no one put the effort into it. It was generative, and you can read it and see it. And it'll get better where maybe I can't tell, and that'll be fantastic. But the problem with that is then I know that the individual gave the AI.
Did the person think it through?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the fluff writing. Just like humans can add fluff, AI can add fluff.
Totally.
And are you really getting to the nitty gritty of what you're trying to think through?
Yeah, absolutely.
Same with reflection. I think about all the meeting notes, and meeting notes are fantastic. I love meeting notes, AI generated meeting notes, specifically around things I can't attend and I don't have time to attend.
Sure.
So sales calls and being able to see the list of all the sales calls and have the summary and go, oh, that's when I'm going to listen to the recording.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to be in every meeting. That's fantastic. But from my own meetings where I was there, I love having my own notes, and I love scanning them and reflecting on them at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And that's my writing. Those were my key takeaways. And then it kind of helps me see the forest from the trees.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, where are you using the tool to add value? Because I get a ton of value in one area, but there's other areas where me spending the time and actually having to slow down and read something and distill it myself is super valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we got to go back to that principle, no agenda, no attenda, which I guess you championed at one of the prior companies that you helped to lead. Talk about that. What led to that, and what gave rise to that as kind of a rule for your career?
Sure. The first is just the allergic reaction I had to what I mentioned before, which is if you don't have an agenda, then you're literally going to be setting context in the first part of the meeting, no matter what. And if no one knows, and so that's one part. One part is just, by definition now, if you can't even put the agenda together, then you're not even sure what we're going to be talking about, which means you're going to be winging it, which means you're going to be over talking. You know, no one's going to know what's important versus what's not, because you're kind of ruminating and thinking about it out loud at the time. So that's a big kind of a nuisance for me, or annoyance for me.
And certainly a tell.
Are we ready? Are we ready or not? And so I think that's the main part, is like the what questions have to be answered. Why are we here? Has not been figured out yet.
So how did that look? Like, did it actually look like you just decline your attendance?
Yeah, but with a very kind, like, hey, add the agenda. And it's, usually for me, I give them the scale of the org matters here, to be honest.
Sure, totally.
At a small company, I wouldn't do this. I would just talk to the person. Hey, let me help you create the agenda. What do we want to figure out here? There's a bit of where do you coach and where are you just kind of being prickly? And I really don't want to be prickly. But
I think it's kind of fair at some point to be prickly on maybe like the 10th time. You know?
To me, the real. So part of
in a nice way. Like, you know.
Usually for me, it was they always have that you can accept, you can maybe, or you can decline. So I would do the maybe. And to move me from a maybe to an accept is let's add an agenda and let me know how I can help. So that's one part, but it's not to be a pain.
I like that.
I need to think about it ahead of time. So to be my best, I want to know what the subject material is so that I can bring my best self to that meeting. And if you're giving it to me like that's not who I am. There's people that can do that off the cuff. I like to be deliberate. I want to know some background information. And so if you can just give me the agenda, my brain is going to work in the background for 24 hours before that meeting, and it's going to be thinking of stuff, and I'll have ideas and I'll have thoughts. Whereas if you lay it on me in the meeting, what if I just hopped out of a meeting that was really intense and I haven't really processed that one yet, and I'm trying, like, you're just not going to get the best from me.
Absolutely.
So that's the real, the real justification. And then it also leans on, like, if you had something written, you'll get even more from me, because I'll be able to get the brain even more behind the problem that you're trying to solve.
Like, trying to get people to cold start in meetings is just a huge challenge, and that can stem from just not preparing them for what the content's going to be, and it can stem to, like you said, back-to-back scheduling and all those kinds of things.
The back-to-back scheduling, people just need to stop that. If you're listening, don't do that to yourself. 15 minutes, make it a 45-minute meeting, not an hour. Get the agenda tight, have a pre-read. You won't need an hour if you do those things, and life will be massively better.
Massively better, no doubt. Okay, so let's flip the coin and think about a particular meeting that just hit all these characteristics that you're talking about, and really maybe was your best meeting ever.
Yeah, I have maybe two answers. The first would just be any meeting where I get to see a product team make progress and really deliver something. When you can give some guidance and they're on a mission, and then you come in and see that they've accomplished it, and you get to watch it happen, and you can watch people get excited, and it breaks and no one cares because it's the first version. I mean, that's why I do this job. I think in software we're very blessed that it's not the same job every day. It changes constantly. You always have to have new skills. You always have to get better. So any meeting where I get to see that people are learning, people are growing, and we're making progress towards what we're trying to get to, is just very, very gratifying. And everybody needs to see that they're making progress, right? Anyone in every role. So those kind of meetings are awesome. The second is a bit of a maybe a leadership specific meeting, but in the T-Sheets days, we would go off to a call, and we would stay in a house together as a leadership team for 3 days straight. Bigger houses, so we had our own space and we're in each other's way, but we would get up in the morning and make breakfast together, and we would do the dishes together as a leadership team, and then we would get settled in, and we had a coordinator, which was a really, really key benefit, who had known us for years, and he would facilitate, but we would drive the meetings and the agenda. But this was our annual strategy meeting, and so we would go in with digesting our diagnosis of the business and where are we at now and where do we want to go. And so not one meeting, but more of a series of meetings, but it really kind of, it's a forcing function. You're going to bash out the annual plan when you're there, because that's the goal. By the time you leave town, you are out of here, and you have a plan and you have the mission for the year. But it forced a mix of formal time where we would sit down and go through each other's plans and critique each other's plans and help out and help each other, but then also the informal time. Like, it's very natural then when you go into dinner and you're sitting down and have a dinner, you have the now we're post-processing and we're thinking out loud. So you were forced to mix the creative with the structured time, but then you bounce back and forth between them multiple times. I think a lot of times you'll have structured meetings Everyone goes out for dinner or drink afterwards. All this creative stuff happens that's based on the structure. Really, really good stuff. And then everyone goes off their other ways. They go with their team. They have conversations. You don't maybe bring all that creativity back. So this format helped take, last night. So the next morning you do a little bit of reflection on what was talked about in the casual time and how much of that are you going to roll into the current planning? Or I just think that bounce back between structured time and creative, and then keeping us all kind of sequestered in one place, which is a high value return. The first time I was asked to do it, I thought it was crazy. I was like, awkward, uncomfortable. I actually did my first one 3 days into the job. So I was brand new to the business, and went up there with it, which was good onboarding to watch the team bash things out together.
For sure.
But since then, if you get in that rhythm of doing that with the team, and there are different flavors of this. You can do offsites that aren't quite that complicated that still accomplish the same. You can do it in a hotel instead of in a VRBO. But I think that just a ton of value from that kind of time with the team. So absolutely my favorite meetings.
That's awesome. What do you think are the biggest factors that create that gap between some of these best meetings that you've ever been in and the really, really bad ones?
First is just expectations. There's culture and expectations. Is this how meetings work here? And so I think that's a tops down kind of situation where it can be really helpful if you have full control. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're in a big org and you only have leadership over or influence over a specific portion. I like to think that everybody can take control of this, though. Even an individual contributor could suggest a mode to bring a meeting, be like, hey, I want to try this time. Let's see how this works. And turn it into a test. Like, did this work? And get feedback afterwards. And if it highlight the bright spots and tell everyone. So I think you can still, even as an individual contributor, build momentum for that style of pre-read, know the questions to be answered, get to what the goal of the meeting. I think that can happen. But the gaps I see is when people don't feel empowered to do that or don't have the time to do it. They're afraid to do it. And so then you get these gaps of no one will change anything. And now that becomes the cultural norm of back-to-back meetings, lots and lots of context setting with 5 minutes of decision making. That's a flywheel that can keep spinning if no one raises their hand and says, we got to stop doing this.
Absolutely. And some of the smartest people that I know have kind of looked back and realized that they've been living in that, and they, kind of they didn't even know that there was another way, right? It's
the boiling frog.
One of our principal engineers on the team was actually talking about a large organization that he was a part of, and he said, the most interesting feature of the meeting OS that I could have used then would be a text message to my phone 5 minutes before the meeting started. What meeting are you actually going into? The calendar description is not descriptive enough to know why you're, and I'm back to back to back to back to back. So I literally would walk into conference rooms and spend the first 10 minutes just looking at the people, and by process of deduction, trying to figure out what team this was and what meeting I was actually in. That blew my mind, So put yourself in the shoes for a minute of somebody who maybe is just stepping into that kind of role where they might need to lead meetings, as a member of a software engineering team, maybe a team lead. What's a couple of practical tips for how to start doing that really well?
Easiest one is they need to know what great looks like. So they need to be paired with someone who has done it well. So they need to have been there and done that. So almost all the time for us, for team leads, they're rarely a new hire. It's always someone who's been on the team and then they're promoted or worked into that role. And so they've seen what their team lead does. They've seen what other team leads does. So I think you can tell people.
And they've seen it in the context of
of how this company works and how sprints work at this company. Exactly. So I think that's number one. You can tell people a ton of things. But so I think that's number one. The second thing you can do is just if you're a culture of recording meetings, which I think is really, really important. Easier to do now. With AI, everybody wants everything recorded and transcripts and stuff. But if you can record them and then the leaders can actually then watch and give feedback for coaching, I think that's the other thing that are just super valuable is to not be in the room, because if I'm in the room, the dynamic changes. So it'll be different. But if I can not be there, but then watch the recording and give tips, say, here's what you could have done here, and kind of create that culture of coaching. I think those are the two things, just seeing what good looks like, and then also trying to have some sort of hands-on coaching versus word of mouth coaching, right? Versus this is going on in the meetings as a manager or leader, trying to take that diluted feedback already that you didn't see firsthand, and then provide coaching. You can do it, and you should be able to do that. But if you can watch a recording and then help somebody through something, I think you're just 10 times more powerful.
Yeah, that's great. JD, this has been an absolute blast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I had fun.
Worst Meeting Ever is brought to you by Contio. What if AI could kill your broken meetings? Find out how at Contio.ai.